Thank you so much for joining us here on this very special day. I do understand that, we're going to go through all the different emotions, the grief of our loss, the remembering of those special moments that we have with our friend and our family member, and the celebration of Terry's life. And I think I know that's how he'd want to be remembered and celebrated that way.
I'm Bev Pettigrew, wife of Terry's oldest brother, Larry. I was inconsolable, and my husband of almost 38 years was with someone else in Calgary, not here to hold and comfort me. This is a true love story, like none other. You see, he was handpicked to be the one to hold the hand of his precious brother, only to place it in the hand of God when Terry was ready. What a privilege and honor to do that, for God was the only one who could separate that bond. Today he felt the love of a brother that time apart cannot erase. I felt the warmth none other ever touched or felt embraced. When I first saw Terry after 33 years, he was in a hospital bed at the Foothills Hospital on the Mother's Day weekend. I wondered if I would recognize him and feel what Larry felt. His eyes were soft and tender, the icy blue color I remember. His toes peeked out from under the hospital blanket. Yes, those weird little toes were definitely related to the ones I cuddle up with every night. I'm honored and so proud that my husband served 25 years in the Canadian Air Force. We discovered a shared love of aircraft in Larry and Terry. Larry never saw action, but Terry was also a soldier. He saw plenty of action. He fought many wars. His mission was to fight for the rights of homeless people, not to be ignored, stepped over, and looked away from. He fought for the right to die where and as he wished. He was a hero. He helped to make homelessness nothing to be ashamed of. He held his head high. He was never afraid to tackle the media and set things right. He was a peacemaker and a peacekeeper. He deserved a medal. But his work continues as he passes this torch to you. Now you know it's your job to carry this torch.
In working hard together and with the staff of the DI, the medical team was honored to be a part of Terry's life, his ongoing care, and especially to care and share in his last days. Terry taught us that people need to be seen and acknowledged, no matter their life circumstances. We share his stories and his love for life with anyone who would listen. All of us on the medical team were touched in special ways by Terry. Mostly, we were gifted with learning from Terry. He will remain in our hearts and will be remembered each time we look at the picture of the horses that Terry gifted us after one of his hospital visits. It hangs in a very special place in the health office. To a man who loved horses, we share this quote with you. "The wind of heaven is that which blows between a horse's ears." This is an Arabian proverb. Enjoy the winds of heaven, Terry.
Story about an eagle that thought it was a chicken. And it lived all its life in a chicken coop. And one day, this mighty eagle tries to convince this eagle who thinks he's a chicken that he's really an eagle. And the eagle who thinks he's a chicken outsmarts the big eagle and flees back to the chicken coop. And all the chickens applaud him because he has outsmarted the eagle. And the eagle who thinks he's a chicken says, "I'm not only the best chicken in this coop, I'm the smartest one." And one day I told Terry this story, and he said, "It's a good thing I know I'm a turkey." But he wasn't a turkey. Terry was an eagle. It's just he'd never been taught to fly. And like many of us, his struggle in life was that he didn't know he had wings and he couldn't find them. For Terry, his journey into flight wasn't always easy and it wasn't always graceful or pretty. But it was his path, whatever that path was. And in the end, it led him to a place that he never imagined he would be because it led him here to the drop-in center. He was broken and hurt, and he was penniless, and he was carrying a label that those who carry it never dreamt of ever carrying, which was homeless. I asked him once if he was afraid that first day he walked through our doors, and he said, "Nope, I don't ever let fear get the better of me." It was how he lived his life. Never let fear get the better of you. And yet, Terry knew fear. He lived it, he breathed it, especially as his journey towards the end quickened. He used to joke and say, "Yeah, I fear dying, but I know this place will be there with me, so I'm not going to let fear keep me down." Terry always had an eye for the pretty ladies, and he always kept his eye out for them, caring, watching, making sure everyone was safe. I remember the day Terry asked me how my daughters were. He knew how important they are to me, and he knew how much I cherish them. "You tell them from me," he said. "When I'm gone, it don't matter where I am. I'll be watching over all three of you." And then he paused and chuckled and added, "And tell them, if they give you any trouble, they'll have to be accountable to me, even if I have to come back and haunt them." I laughed because really one of Terry's most endearing qualities wasn't that he was a rogue or liked to think of himself as a real ladies' man. His most endearing quality was that he was genuine. "This is who I am," he said. "This is me." And that me was, in spite of all his protests and insistence of being a turkey, that me was an eagle. And boy, can he fly high.
So I've been with the Calgary Drop-In Center now for a little better than 3 years. One of the first individuals I got to meet, actually the day I came in for my interview, was Terry Pettigrew. And him and I kind of hit it off, especially in 2007 when a friend of mine was on the chuck wagon committee and he asked me to help him out volunteering with one of the chuck wagons, ergo the fire wagon shirt. It no longer exists now for other reasons, but Terry and I used to sit there and discuss and debrief the day's events, especially around the Rangeland Derby, and he always amazed me at his horse knowledge, some of his psychology around how he would take horses and he would equate them to people. And sometimes he would say, "Well, that guy's like a northbound gelding, but he's spewing stuff out of his south end." And he would just crack me up with some of the things he used to say. And one of the other things that drew us together distance doesn't have to be a thing for family. I have a lot of my family lives in Calgary, and it might as well be in Bogota, the distance that we have between us. Things are changing. Terry used to say that the distance that me and my father have would, one day we would come together. And I think it's kind of fitting, maybe the guy was a bit of a prophet, because next weekend my brother and myself and my sister are part of a team and we're doing the Ride to Conquer Cancer. My dad's a 4-year cancer survivor. He's actually one of the longest lung cancer patients that's ever survived. So I don't know if Terry could see into the nether world there and find things or what. This is for you. This is a Stampede belt buckle from 2007. After I'd given Terry all the pins from the Rangeland Derby, all the different drivers and stuff.
Terry it amazed me that he had his sense of humor right up until the end. And in October, I went to South Africa. I went on a missions trip to South Africa. And I was telling Terry about my trip. And he kept insisting that I take him with me. And he argued that with all the weight that he'd lost, I could definitely fit him in my suitcase. And it also blew me away at how caring Terry was, even when he was dying. In January of this year, I found out that my father had cancer. And originally he was diagnosed as having cancer in his bladder and in one of his kidneys. And when I told Terry was devastated that I would have to go through that, even though he was suffering from it himself. And then when the diagnosis changed, and it actually ended up being a fairly good prognosis when they eventually found that my dad had only had the cancer in his kidney and that it was easily treatable, Terry was excited right along with me, even though he was still dying. And that just blew me away, that he was suffering so much and that he could still care and he could still have a sense of humor. And that was Terry's true character.
answer.